Hi everyone, and welcome to today's lesson, which is going to be focused around game genres. To start off with, I'd just like you to spend a couple of minutes thinking about what the word genre means to you. Where have you heard it before? What do you think it means? And hopefully this will match up with what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so game genres. We will be successful if by the end of today's lesson we can list a variety of different game genres, we can describe different game genres, and we can describe the impacts, most importantly, that a game genre might have on a specific game design. Okay, so let's start off with thinking about what game genre actually means. Now, the word genre can also be sometimes referred to as the theme of the game. I think sometimes if you look up game genres online, it will kind of revert back to the types that we spoke about last week, okay? So I want to try and think of it more like the normal word genre you would think of with regards to like a book theme, for example, okay? I looked up the definition of what genre means, as this is what Wikipedia gave me. I know that's not always the best source of information, but basically it's kind of described as what a socially agreed upon convention is. So basically just like what everybody over the years has kind of come to know as the word comedy or has come to know as the word romance, for example. Okay. What I want you to do is just spend a couple of minutes, maybe pause the video and have a little think about how many examples of genres that you can think of. Maybe just get a notebook, write some down, and see how many you can come up with. Okay, hopefully you've had a minute to do that. What I've done is come up with some examples of genres that I thought of. So here's some. We've got adventure, fantasy, thriller, action, mystery, religion, comedy, western, war, sci-fi, sport, drama, learning or educational, crime, romance, and horror. And obviously there will be more than this as well, okay? More than this as well. And sometimes a game can come under a number of different genres, okay? So today, what I want you guys to do is think about the different aspects of game design. Now, over the coming weeks, we're going to talk about these in a lot more detail. So I'm aware that you don't maybe know what all of the terms mean, but I'm hoping that the example I've created for you will help you with today's task. And we're going to look at narrative, game control, mechanics, level and character design, and UI design, and think about how these things are affected by our game genre. Okay? Now, what your task is going to be to do today is to take all of these 6 different aspects, and for each of you, when you pick a genre, you're going to pick a game that falls into that genre and then look at each of the 6 aspects individually. Okay, for the level 4s, I want you guys to pick one genre and therefore one game. Level 5s, you're going to pick 2 genres and therefore 2 games, and level 6, you're going to pick 3 genres and 3 games. Okay, but let me walk you through an example so you can see the type of thing that I'm expecting you to create or produce this week. Before I do it, it's important to remember that you can produce this in any format that you like, okay? If possible and you're doing it electronically, it'd be really great if you could bring some pictures of your games in to support your arguments, which is what I've done. But obviously, if you're restricted with IT, it's totally fine to do it just on a bit of paper and write down the information and then just post me a picture. That's totally fine as well, okay? So I picked Western, okay, and the example that I'm going to use is Red Dead Redemption 2 because I'm hoping that it's such a big game that most of you, if you haven't played it, will have probably heard of it before. So I'm going to talk through each of the 6 different sections and how I think the genre impacts them. Okay, now I'm not talking about narrative as a whole. I mean, Red Dead Redemption has a huge narrative, a really, really big narrative. But what I want to do is focus on the aspects of that narrative which are linked in with the genre of the game. So what is linked with Western? So the 3 points that I came up with was the whole kind of narrative behind the game is that you're a part of a gang, that you're bandits, you're trying to stay alive, you don't have a lot of money, so you're doing random jobs for people or stealing or assassinations or whatever. And that comes under the theme of old old style Western. That's what it used to be like back in the day out in the country. Okay, you have to move from place to place around the map as kind of, I suppose, rather than having traditional levels, you move into different places, which becomes your new levels because you're being chased by the authorities because of the criminal actions that you're doing. So again, that links into the narrative of Western. Okay, people are disloyal to you, double cross you, and in turn, you can pick how you respond to different situations and can do the same to others. And again, that comes under the theme of old style Western. along with, you know, the traditional theme of what it is that you're doing. So narrative is very closely linked to our traditional style of Western and the Wild West. Sorry, that was a bit of a tongue twister. And all that type of stuff. Okay, so that's an example of how narrative is effective. Let's look at game controls. Now, game controls is one of the really hard ones, I think, to link to the narrative. So what I've done is I just take a wee screenshot of what the main controls are, and where I could see that kind of linked to Western, I suppose most importantly, is that you've got one of the back trigger buttons being used as your fire, which is the one that's most likely to feel like a gun, the fact you're pulling that. If this was used with a special type of control, so for example, if you're maybe doing sports and you were talking about the Wii, maybe Wii Tennis, then obviously it's a lot easier to link that to the sport because you're having to move the motion control you know, how you would a tennis racket. But for this one, I've got the fire button. I've also put that the reload button is quite easily accessible, and that's important because in old Western films, you're not going to have the new age guns that you have now that can do, you know, hold lots of cartridges or big fancy guns. You're going to have old school shotguns, which potentially only have like you know, 2 bullets, so you're going to have to reload all the time, and that's quite linked closely to the genre. Okay, I've also put the satchel there because the satchel is a big part of the fact that he carries everything around with him because of, you know, him being in that constant movement as part of the bandits. So a lot of his valuables are kept with him, and you can access that on your person because that's part of the kind of theme and the genre of the game. Okay, game mechanics. So one of the big ones in Red Dead Redemption is that you can lead or you can ride horses. Obviously, that can be just trotting or galloping, cantering as part of whatever you're doing as the gameplay. So that's one of the big ones. You're also controlling your character as well as the horse. So you can do shooting and stuff while you're on the back of the horse. That's a big mechanic that happens as part of the game. You can also equip different weapons of different types at different times. You can have access to them. You can keep them on your back. So bow and arrow might be used for hunting, for example, where you might want to have a revolver when you're going into sort of fight. And then also other game mechanics. Game mechanics are about your movement. So specific movements to westerns and that type of genre would be things like aiming, firing, crouching or hiding, maybe running or walking as part of your kind of getting away or you know, combative style of the western part of the game. Okay, so for that one, there's lots of mechanics in the game. I'm not expecting you to explain all of them, but focus on the ones that you think are linked to the genre. Okay, level design. Again, for games such as Red Dead Redemption and you know, Call of Duty and all these type of things, there's a really good link from your level and character designs back to your genres. There's a lot of work that has went into the programming of these games. If you look around, you can see the buildings. They've all got the, you know, the type of fronts on the shops and things that you would see as part of that old you know, old era. What I mean by that is like the time, so it's set back in time, not in modern day. And also the western theme, you know, you see the saloons, you see the swing doors, you see the type of the buildings, what they're built of. You know, they're not brick, they're wooden buildings, that type of thing. Again, when you move through different parts of the game, you're moving to the cities, then obviously you're going to see different types of buildings, but they'll still match the genre and the theme of the era that they were set in. Okay, as well as just the buildings, you've obviously got the roads, the fact they're not paved, they're wooden. You see the horse prints from all the horseshoes. That's really important. It matches the theme. Objects and other things in the background, such as the power lines, the fact that they're all wooden. You're not seeing big modern day pylons that don't match. So that's all types of things that match in with the era and the theme as well. Okay, also what I put for level design is that you don't have separate levels. So sometimes if you're playing an adventure or a fantasy style game, you might have separate levels and they might be set in different places that all kind of match that adventure theme. With this one, it's one very large level, one very large map that you're moving through as you progress through the game. And that again kind of matches the Western theme and the fact that it's a large open area. You're going to be moving about quite a lot because of the bandit theme. So again, that matches in as well. Okay, character design is quite a big one. There's a lot of customization in Red Dead Redemption, as there is in many other games, but it's still within the theme. So the different types of full outfits you can pick for your character will be appropriate to the era and the time that with which it's set in the Western theme. The different accessories, hats, you know, like belts, all that type of thing that people wore back in the day. That would be something that you can choose from. Another addition that they brought to Red Dead Redemption is the fact that you go to your barber to get your haircut, which would have been the way you would have to get your haircut. Um, unless you did it yourself. And it obviously gives you options as well if you've played it to do things like trim your beard and stuff, which you can do yourself or you can get done at the barber. Also, what you should remember in character design, and it's not always just the character that you're playing, okay? So when you see any other characters that you're interacting with, or you are, passing by people, every single person that you see should be in character as such, okay? So should be matching the theme. The dresses would be classic of that style and that era and the Western theme. All the hairdos would be like that. People might have certain types of mustaches, etc., etc. Okay. When it comes to other themes, things like sci-fi, you're maybe going to come across aliens and that type of stuff that keeps it within that kind of theme and genre. Okay, lastly is the user interface. And this can be sometimes a little bit difficult to link to the theme, but you'll be surprised how much there is in there. So this is kind of 3 pictures that I gathered, the kind of full game poster, if you like, on the right there. On the middle is one of the main menus, and on the left is when you open up your satchel from that control panel. And you can see that throughout them, there's a font that's been created by Rockstar Games, probably, or they've outsourced it somewhere, and that is used throughout them. Okay, so they've created a Western style font. Or at least what they think is a Western style font, and then they've used that throughout to keep it consistent. All the menus have a similar kind of theme. You can see quite a lot of the black and white, which matches the era that it's set in, the fact that it's set in the past. They are they're quite plain. It's really good actually, and if you have a little look inside the satchel, you can see all of the pictures hand drawn, a lot of them probably, and they're all realistic of the type of things that that person might be able to pick up or have within that genre. And the names of things are also really important, so there's lots of impact that it's had to a lot of the items and the menus, etc., as part of the theme or genre. Okay. So remember that what your task is to do is to first of all pick a theme and then pick a game, okay? If you have a knowledge of games, you might want to think of a game you like first and then match it to a theme. So for example, if you're really into Call of Duty, then pick the war theme, go with that, and then try and answer it. If you're level 4, that's your task. So you can do it on a PowerPoint like what I've done, kind of 3 bullet points minimum for each thing with some supporting pictures, or if you want to do it on just a Word document or a publisher document, the same thing. Absolutely fine, probably a lot easier to upload, but it's up to you. Okay, remember if you're level 5, you're picking a second theme. Now that could be anything, for example, sci-fi, it could be romance, whatever. Same as last time, I would say try to pick something that's completely different. Okay, remember the games don't have to be huge games like Red Dead Redemption, so you could pick sci-fi and then go for a really simplistic game like Space Invaders, because there still will be links to the themes. Just with the big games, it's sometimes a bit easier to make those links. Okay, if you're level 6, remember you're picking 3 games. Okay, so you can submit these as 3 separate PowerPoints or 3 separate documents, or alternatively, if you're doing it on something like Publisher, which is great, then you could just have sort of a page to 2 pages, whatever you need, for each individual one. Remember, with your pictures and then your 3 bullet points under each of your 6 sections. Okay, lastly, once you've done it, I want you to have a little bit of a think about how successful you've been. So were you able to list a variety of different game genres? If you weren't, could you do that now? Okay, can you describe a number of different game genres and what they mean? Can you explain what romance means compared to horror, how they're different? And lastly, and most importantly, hopefully through the work that you submit to me, I will be able to see that you can describe the impacts a game genre might have on a game design. Okay, happy researching. I hope you use a little bit of time to maybe play some of the games. That will help a lot with your research as well. And I'll speak to you next week, guys. Bye.